From the School of Life Foundation, this is another episode of What You Given, a broadcast based on the invitation, find what brings you joy and match it to the needs of the world. This becomes your gift. Everyone has something inside of themselves to give, and I want to know, what are you giving? In my interviews, we meet people from all walks of life. I am Jack Rolfe, and on the show today, we have Morgan Curth. Hello, Morgan.
Hi.
Thank you so much for taking some time to join me.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. Very excited to have some discussion with you today. And I know that our listeners are going to just immediately fall in love with you and going to enjoy the discussion as well. So you are coming to us today from the beautiful country of Montana.
I am.
Yes, Missoula, Montana. So tell us, how long have you been living there?
We've been living here for the last couple of years, and we moved out here for my husband's job, and we love it so much. Photography is just booming. It is so good because it's so gorgeous.
Yes, it is gorgeous. I've had family that lived there and been there. It is such a beautiful spot in the world. And you mentioned photography. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your business?
Okay, awesome. So I say I've been photographing since I came out of the womb, but I really got into it my senior year of high school. I took an AP photo class, and we had to do a project on like a concentration project with like 15 pieces and like tell a story. And so I chose the topic preserving the memory of my mother, because my mother passed away when I was younger from cancer. And so it is super cool to see from that moment in high school of like that concentration project of preserving the memory of my mother to now seeing like at every wedding, she's there. At every couple session, she's there. With every family session, she's there. Every newborn session, she's there. Just like she was in every photo, or on the left side of every photo in my AP portfolio. So it is so cool to see how close I am to my mom through photography.
That's beautiful. I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things that we talk about on this podcast is that we have inspirational moments throughout our life when our soul speaks to us, and it leads us on this divine path of finding what our talents and skills are, and then progressing that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I just felt impressed as you shared this project you did about your mom, mm-hmm. that you probably had some inspirational moments during that time and also since then, and she's been part of that. Is that correct?
Oh my goodness, yes. I can't even tell you. Just it's quite crazy how much.
Yeah. I'm sure it's there are probably some sacred moments with that as well. And but how awesome that she has been a part of helping you from the other side of the veil, discovering your talents and passions. And what a wonderful thing. So it, looking at your photography, the beautiful pictures that you take, and it looks like you focus a lot on wedding pictures. Is that right?
Yeah. So we like to emphasize that we are wedding photographers. Like, we don't mind doing family sessions or newborn sessions, but I think there's just something different when you have like you put a couple in their wedding gear in front of the mountains. It just does something to my soul. Like it just like fire. Like seriously, my heart feels fire. Because like I'm just like, oh, so pretty. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Aaron and I will be driving through Montana and he's like, look at those mountains. Aren't they so pretty? I'm like, yeah. Can you imagine a bride and groom in front of that? And that is stunning. And she's like, oh my gosh, Morgan. So yeah.
You mentioned it's like fire in your soul. I read through several reviews of people that you have done photography for.
Oh, you're so great.
And I think they feel that fire from you because so many of them talk about how you just make them feel so comfortable and everything comes alive. And I think and I sense that's just part of your personality and who you are. And I wish that people listening to the podcast could see, because I get to see you because we're recording this on Zoom, but you just exude light. And
you are so kind. Oh my gosh.
Oh, well, it's true. I'm speaking the truth, and your smile is infectious. And so how beautiful that you're sharing that, and then you help others feel that as well. And I kind of feel like there might be a story here a little bit. The name of your business, if I'm got this right, is Elizabeth and Samuel Photography.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So when I graduated high school, I was like booming with photography. Everyone was like, do you want to do my engagement session? Do you want to do like family photos? And I was like, okay. And then, so I was like trying to think of an interesting name for my photography business. And Morgan Elizabeth, there's already so many out there. And Elizabeth is my middle name.
Yes.
So I grew up Catholic, and my family, they crack me up. So when I was confirmed, my confirmation name is Elizabeth as well. So they would always joke with me like Morgan Elizabeth. And like, it was just too funny. And so when I was like trying to think of a name that would stick, I was like, they'll think like, what is that weird girl? Her business is like two of the same names. And so I was like, what about Elizabeth Photography? And so it stayed that until about our first year in Montana, when Aaron came with me to all of my shoots, and he would just like carry my camera bag, make funny faces at kids for the camera. But we shot one of his best friend's weddings, and I was like, can you just do the groom's photos, like the guy's photos? And so like while they're getting ready, and then like their portrait session. And so as I was looking through those photos at the end of the day, I was like, Aaron, these are like pretty good. I'm very impressed. And he was like, I guess I've been learning. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I was like, what if we did this together? Like as a husband and wife photography team, like 2 shooters, always at every session, every wedding, you have 2 shooters. And he was like, okay, let's do it. And so when we moved to Montana, we changed the name from Elizabeth Photography to Elizabeth and Samuel. So Elizabeth is my middle name and Samuel is Aaron's middle name. So Morgan Elizabeth and Aaron Samuel. And it's so funny because every inquiry that we get, it's like, hey, Elizabeth, hey, Samuel. And then we sign it, Morgan and Aaron. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed that I just caught. And we're like, no, we get it like a million times. But I think I don't know. I love it. I think it's great and it's perfect for us.
I love it too. And how memorable is that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I first looked up your business, I thought, oh, I think I've got the wrong business because I don't recognize these names.
Oh, you're so
It-
you're so funny.
so we should clarify for those listening today that Aaron is your husband.
Yes.
And I think you've been married about 3 or 4 years. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
4 years. Uh-huh.
Okay. And why don't you
And
tell us how the two of you met?
so we met. It's quite funny. He served his mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Colorado, and right as when his mission had finished was the weekend that I was baptized as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so his first Sunday in the young single adult branch and my first Sunday were this, like, it was both of our first Sundays, and we were like, it was a fast and testimony meeting, which just means like when people get up and share like what they know to be true. And so I had like gone up, and afterwards Aaron came up to me and he's like, "Hey, I really, really loved what you shared." And I was like, why is this good looking guy talking to me? and then we had like, it's so funny. We stayed like the best of friends forever. Like, he wanted to pursue more, but I was like, let's just be like best friends. And he went and studied abroad in Korea, and I went to BYU, Idaho. And somehow, being halfway across the world, we got super close. Like, we would talk on Skype and Messenger all the time. And then when we both got back, we were going to see where things would go. But I had just put in my mission papers. And so I was like, not really looking for a relationship. And so I got my mission call to the Utah Salt Lake City West Mission, Spanish. And so I went, and like right at the end of the mission, I had gotten an email from him just telling me how life was and everything. And it was so funny because I emailed back and I slipped his girlfriend's name in. And I was just like, how's everyone doing? I was like, how's Brittany? How's Sally? And then I was like, I named her name. And it was so cute because he emailed back right away. And and then it was just history from there, I say. But he was like, no, Morgan, it was very hard to go on a date with you because you're like, no, let's just be friends. And so finally we started dating, and when I had come home from school to photograph a wedding, and then we were just dating for a short period of time. So I'll let you go into that.
Well, that's thank you for sharing. Whether that was your approach planned or not, to get closer to Aaron, it worked. And
it's so funny.
And here you are, happily married and in business together, and just
living in Montana.
Doing good things.
Yeah.
Morgan, you mentioned BYU Idaho and some schooling there, and I believe it was during part of that time that you experienced a serious car accident.
Yeah. So Aaron and I had been dating for 6 weeks. So I had gone home for Thanksgiving break. So I'd gone home beginning of October to photograph a wedding, and that's when we officially started dating. And then I went back out to school, and then I'd come home for Thanksgiving break. And we met each other's families, and it was fabulous. So when I flew back out to school, my district leader from the mission had just started dating my roommate. And so I asked them a huge favor. I asked them if they would mind coming to pick me up from the Salt Lake City airport instead of Idaho Falls because it was so much cheaper to fly into Salt Lake versus Idaho Falls.
Yeah.
And when we did, we got in the car and we were so excited to just like see everyone, see each other. And then we stopped at In-N-Out and got Neapolitan shakes, so good. And then I just remember it snowing like crazy. So we started our trek back from Salt Lake to Idaho, Rexburg, and like I said, it was snowing like crazy. It got more intense as the night went on. The snow turned quickly into ice, and we were on I-15, and so we were in the right lane, and the truck slipped on black ice, and we veered into the left lane and then into the median, and then the truck rolled 5 times, and I was laying down asleep in the back seat, and I was ejected from the vehicle through the front windshield, and I landed. The truck continued to flip 4 more times, and then I landed on the road, and the driver found me unconscious. And so when all the like ambulances got there and everything, I was still unconscious. So they like took me to the hospital right away, and I stayed unconscious for about 2.5 months after that. I had a broken pelvis. So being in the accident, and then being asleep unconscious for quite a long time, that resulted in having a traumatic brain injury. I have road rash all over my body, but it's kind of cool now because I can just be like, oh, that's a cool scar. So I was air flighted from, Idaho Falls wanted to move me to Salt Lake, but my family, they're from Cincinnati, and my Cincinnati has a well-known hospital specifically known for traumatic brain injuries, and in Cincinnati. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so they air flighted me from Idaho Falls to Cincinnati, and they immediately started therapy when I moved in. I was unconscious until about the middle of January. So the accident happened in November, and I was unconscious until the middle of January. So I went through intensive therapy in the inpatient care at the hospital, and then once I started waking up from the coma, and I just have to mention this, when you wake up from the coma, it's not like from the movies where you're like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? Who's in love with me? Like it's a very, very, very slow process. Like I couldn't speak because I had a trach in, and so I would whisper, and I would whisper like jumbled up words. I could not say complete sentences, or I would start a thought and I would like lose what I was trying to say halfway through. So I would just stop talking. And so that, so I don't know if I had mentioned this, but I broke my pelvis in the accident. The back of my pelvis was completely shattered, so they wouldn't allow me to walk on my left leg. So I was in a wheelchair, and when I started waking up, like I said, I was in very intensive therapy, and They had me like practice walking or to learn how to walk with just my right leg. And that was very difficult, very frustrating. And um, but then when I graduated from inpatient care, I moved to 9 months of outpatient care, which was speech therapy, physical therapy, and occupational therapy. So from like saying complete sentences to walking, to using a fork and a knife, my hands were kind of stuck against my chest, like folded downward. So I wasn't able to like hold a fork and a knife. I wasn't able to write my name down with a pen. So um, the 9 months started like a week after I was released from the hospital. And it was 3 times a week, like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And it was, my therapists were amazing. I am so, like, it's so funny. I still think of them often. Like just things that they taught me, or things that they would say that I could do. Like instead, like this one is funny. So I have a pretty bad tremor, and when I'm putting on mascara, I always poke my eye out because of my tremor. So
Yeah.
they were like, okay, you're just gonna have to hold your wrist while putting on your mascara, and that will keep it steady. And so literally every time I put on mascara, I think of them. It's it's kind of sweet, bittersweet. Like
Yes.
I don't want to have to go through that moment to know them, but I'm so grateful that I did, because they're amazing humans.
You know, obviously it's a sensitive story to share. I'm sure you've shared it at other times. It's sensitive for anybody that goes through a traumatic event like that in their life. And a few things came to my mind I'd like to ask.
Yes, please.
And, you know, and I'm hoping the listeners are kind of have these same questions, but you
Yeah.
mentioned coming out of that unconscious state, coming out of the coma, that it's kind of a slow process. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious, as you were coming out of that, did you have a conscious level enough that were you feeling at any point just like scared, or like what is going on here, or kind of explain that a little bit?
That's a good question. So I, um, like I said, it's not like, bam, what happened, or like, sort of thing like you see in movies. It's a very slow process. And I feel like it was very slow for my brain as well to understand what was going on. So I don't think I understood anything that was going on. Like I just remember like having the trach in, and then finally taking it out, and then being like, you can talk like in your normal voice now. And I'd be like, no, I can't. I'd like whisper. So it was a very slow process for me to understand what was going on or how things were happening.
Yeah, and I believe as you were coming out of that, you were recovering, you were inpatient care, and then your outpatient care. Um, I believe during that time, it was even felt for a while that maybe you wouldn't walk again, or maybe you wouldn't talk again, or but it seems like there was probably some miracles in your life. Is that a correct statement?
Oh my goodness, I have goosebumps when you said that. So in Idaho, before I was air flighted to Cincinnati, the doctors, about 2 weeks after the fact that I hadn't woke up, the doctors told my dad, because I hadn't woke up, the prognosis did not look good, and that my greatest hope was to be a shriveled vegetable for the rest of my life. And my dad like that was probably not the best thing to say to my dad
Yeah.
in that moment, just because he's dealing with so much stress. And but like doctors do have to give you like the worst outcome, and
Right.
that was the worst outcome. And so if anything, like if I could achieve anything better than that, then that would be amazing. But that's when my dad started the process to get me to the Drake Hospital in Cincinnati, because he knew the potential that they had to help me get back to where I was. I don't want to say be the same, because you cannot go through an experience like we went through and be the same after going through it. Like so many people are like, are you back to normal? I'm like, well, was I really normal before? Like you can't be normal after you go through something like this. Like
Yeah.
something this life changing, like it changes you, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Like definitely like physically, sometimes I get so frustrated because of the accident and things that have changed me. And then mentally as well, like my brain just isn't the way that it was before. And that is frustrating. So I've learned how to be patient, and I've learned so much about Jesus Christ. It kind of makes me want to cry, because like just how much he loves, like he has no bounds. And like if I went through the accident, he loves me. If I didn't, he loves me without like without bounds. And I just think that is so special. But um I don't know. It helps a lot with like the pain of like having a broken pelvis and the frustrations of that, knowing that he knows my pain specifically, because a lot of people like have sympathy for what I have gone through, but Jesus Christ literally has empathy, because he knows exactly what I went through and how he can help it. Because it like I've met people with brain injuries and they're like, oh yeah, I understand it, but I'm like, well, do you really? And are, because no brain injury is the same. No car accident is the same. Like they can be similar, but they're like literally they are not the same. And I think that is where Jesus Christ can come in and help us, help comfort us, and help like just remind us that we are loved. And that means so much to me.
That is beautiful, and you are a beautiful person. And I for those listening today, I want to point out something that we just heard from Morgan, and that is miracles still happen. And whether it was going through a traumatic accident like this, or maybe in your day-to-day life, you're listening and you have some emotional challenges or some other pain or something else that you're trying to get through, just know that miracles still happen. They really do. And in the School of Life Foundation, one of the things we teach is that we have challenges all the time in our life. And those challenges can either be problems or they can be opportunities. And the choice is yours as to which one it is. And as we listen today to Morgan, we can hear that she chose to make opportunities out of this challenge instead of the problems. And that doesn't mean that she hasn't gone through hard times and still does, but she is turning it into positive things. I hope you can feel that from her. And something else I want to share from that, as we listen to you, Morgan, you talked about this this bond and this relationship with your therapist, the physical therapist,
Oh,
speech
yeah.
therapist, occupational therapist. And I want to point something out on that too, because part of my background, I'm a physical therapist. And so I know about that profession. And what happens is, as your therapist works with you, they're giving literally their heart and soul to help you regain your heart and soul. And so they're serving you, even though it's part of their career, it's part of their job. But as a physical therapist, I'll just say I've never seen therapy as a career or a job. I see it as an opportunity to work with people and see them in some of their hardest times, but see them overcome that and be a part of helping them overcome that. And so the point I want to make is whether it's somebody providing therapy or whether it's somebody delivering you a loaf of bread on a day that you're down, those things change people's lives. And then they create these relationships. And as we all pass on from this life, I think there's three things we take with us. There's the knowledge we gain in life. It's what we do with that knowledge, and then the relationships that we build through that. And those relationships become literally eternal relationships. So it touches my heart when you talk about that bond with the therapist. And I just want all of us to know we can do those things and make a difference in people's lives. And
Yes.
So I want to progress into the theme of the show. But before I do that, was there anything else you wanted to say about your accident or your recovery?
I mean, going off of the amazing physical and occupational and speech therapists, like they saw me move from a wheelchair to a walker to a gait belt with a swarm of people around me to no gait belt, but still with that swarm of people around me, to just one person around me, then to no one. So that was big. And like I think for them, they were like, whoa, like this is happening, like seriously, a miracle is like happening before our eyes. And I think it was just so cool. And I don't know, I think about them all the time. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm glad you paired them with miracle, because they were part of your miracle. Their hands, their knowledge, their expertise.
Yeah.
And it's people around us. And sometimes for those listening, you might be a miracle in somebody else's life. The key is, if you feel impressed to go help someone, not only to listen to that, but then have the courage to act upon it. And so that just kind of builds in, the theme of our show. Morgan, is off of the invitation, find what brings you joy and match it to the needs of the world. What does that mean in the life of Morgan Curth?
Ooh, so that means to, like, I don't know, like laugh. Laughing is a huge amount of joy for me. Like smiling, seeing people smile brings a huge amount of joy to me. Oh my goodness. Like, because I'm a photographer, I say this, like capturing moments in time and like giving that to them and seeing the joy that they receive from that is just, it's beautiful. Oh my goodness.
So I love that. And, the laughter that you share, the smile you share, capturing these moments in photography that you share are talents and skills that you've discovered. And this brings joy to other people's lives. So if I'm hearing you right, what brings you joy is seeing other people experience joy. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes. 100%.
I absolutely love that. And
That's cool.
So I would suspect that a need in the world then that you're addressing is we need more joy in the world. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Oh my goodness. Yes.
So as we get more joy in the world, Morgan, what do you think that brings to the world and to our lives?
I think that can bring, when you're joyful, I think it can bring peace. And like, I don't know, as you were saying that, I like took a breath in, and like I my heart felt like a little tingle. And I think that like peace literally is like what people need personally, as well. Like feeling that joy can bring so much happiness and um, calmness and um, like, I don't know, frustration for from like, I don't know, my tremors or frustrations just from like my physical difficulties. You can have that joy just from little things, like people seeing like you captured a moment that they didn't even know that you were standing there and capturing that, like um seeing, or like seeing them have that joy is makes your, it doesn't make your pain go away, but it makes you less focused on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And it just made me think, just like as a photographer, you are capturing these moments,
Mhm.
and people aren't even realizing that you're capturing those moments. I see a parallel there that even if it's not photography, but as individuals,
Mhm.
if we will be observant of other people's lives, we can capture moments. And by that, I mean, we can see what's happening in their life and maybe capture a moment where we see they need something.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
and we fulfill that if we will move forward with that. And so, what a wonderful parallel there. And, I also want to point out, you have this skill of photography that you had inspirational moments early on in your life that kind of led to this, and your mom's been helpful and a part of that throughout your life, and then you've worked on developing that skill. You've gotten passionate about it, but there's also things that you were just innately born with, and that's laughter, and it's your smile. It's the glow about your personality. And as
Absolutely.
I think about, as you described, going through the recovery from your accident, I think that those natural traits and gifts you were born with is part of what brought you through. Because I could just see the Morgan Curth smile and laughter inside of you saying, you know what, we're going to get out of here. No matter what, we are going to break through.
Yeah.
And and they did. And the world is a better place because of it,
Mm.
because you were able to share those things again. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for delivering your gifts to the world, making the world a better place, which in turn is then a better place for all of us. And
Thank you.
Morgan, I've come to a point in the show, and it always comes so fast for me, where we need to get to the point of closing the show. I could, like all my other guests, I could talk to you for hours and hours, and just have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But we've come to that point where we need to bring this show to a close. And those listening know that brings us to our golden nugget time. And so it's time. I'm going to ask you for our golden nugget today. If there's only one thing that you wanted the listeners to learn or take with them today, it may be something we've talked about. It may be something we haven't talked about. But what would be that one thing you would want them to learn?
Oh gosh, this is hard. Just one thing. I guess when you feel like giving up, or that you'd be better off not trying or doing something else, just know that God brought you to this specific point because he knows that you can. And to me, like, through the accident, like, to that specific point, he knew that I could overcome it. And that I'm not nowhere near to where I was before the accident, but I think that is a good thing because, like I said, you can't go through something that crazy and be the way that you were before. And I think that is like my whole point is like experiences are good for you, and they are good for you because they help you grow and they help you become like on the mission. It's so funny. Our mission president asked us to come up with 3 words that would describe our mission. And I use the words here to become. And I think it's quite funny because it's not just the mission. It's kind of for my entire life. Like, I'm here to become something better. I'm here to become what God needs me to become. I'm here to become different. And I don't know. I think that is like, that just brings me happiness, like listening to myself say that. So
That is wonderful golden nuggets and great advice for all of us. And as you were sharing that piece of advice, Morgan, I was thinking that as we go through these challenges in life, and we don't give up, like you talked about, and realize that God is there to help us get through it. As we do, we ultimately become a better version of ourselves.
yeah,
and we
definitely.
keep recreating ourselves if we will be open to that.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt today we have received the better version at this point in life of Morgan Curth. And there's going to be even more and better to come. So thank you so much for being on the show and sharing time with us. You're welcome. And in closing, as always, for those listening, I ask you to remember that your heart feels for you, your mind reasons for you, but your soul speaks to you. Are you listening? Did you listen today? If so, what did you hear and what did you learn? Will you now have the courage to act upon what you felt? Thank you for tuning in. Please follow us on your podcast app so that each new episode is always downloaded, ready for you to listen, and then share the link with others. We would love to have you leave a review and also follow us on Instagram. A special thanks goes out to our producers, Ben and Kayla Martin. Now it's time to move upward and onward and ask yourself, what you giving?